In 1996, a new painkiller was introduced in the United States. Its name was OxyContin. The manufacturer claimed it was safe, that the risk of addiction was minimal, and that it would help millions suffering from chronic pain. Within a few years, the truth began to surface. OxyContin became the catalyst for one of the deadliest epidemics in modern American history. The opioid crisis would claim hundreds of thousands of lives.
Tonight we continue our series on the opioid epidemic with a look at where the pharmaceutical industry fits in.
Designed to fight pain, but instead many people end up fighting addiction.
On an average day like today, pharmacies across America will dispense more than 650,000 opioid prescriptions.
No one ever told us that there was an addictive quality at all.
Hired a private detective to shoot this undercover video. It helped reveal how drug manufacturers, distributors, doctors, pharmacists, and patients all help play a role in the prescription opioid epidemic.
In 1993, your agency approved the production of this opioid narcotic to the tune of 3.5 tons. 3.5 tons of opioids.
People were suffering under opioid addictions that sometimes ended in death, and so many of those addiction stories began with OxyContin.
This is the story of the Sackler dynasty, how a legal business turned into something far darker. In the 1940s and 50s, drug sales were done the traditional way. Sales representatives went from doctor to doctor with a case of samples. This system was simple but limited. Doctors had established habits and relationships, and pharmaceutical companies tried to break through primarily through personal contacts. It was during this time that three brothers, Arthur, Mortimer, and Raymond Sackler, entered the world of medicine. All three worked at Creedmoor Psychiatric Hospital in Queens, a place known for its dark reputation. Patients there often suffered isolation, inadequate care, and sometimes brutal treatments such as electroshock therapy and forced restraints. Behind the hospital walls, an atmosphere of fear and hopelessness prevailed. Yet it was here that the brothers began to observe how medicine could be both a means of healing and a tool of control. Mortimer and Raymond focused on helping patients despite being bound by strict rules and limited resources. Arthur, however, saw medicine differently, not just as a medical practice, but as a business opportunity that could be influenced and expanded far beyond the hospital walls. He founded an advertising agency and began promoting drugs in a way that appealed directly to doctors, using the language of expert studies and scientific evidence. His first major success came with the antibiotic terramycin. The marketing campaign involved direct mail, trade journals, and radio. The result was a huge commercial success and the beginning of Sackler's financial rise. But Arthur did not rest on his laurels. Instead, he began investing in medical education. He created a network of influence that shaped doctors' attitudes toward prescribing. In 1952, the Sackler brothers made a decisive move. They bought a small pharmaceutical company called Purdue Frederick. On the surface, it was nothing remarkable, a modest operation producing earwax removers and laxatives out of a tiny facility. But the Sacklers saw potential where others saw only an ordinary business. They expanded. They added over-the-counter medicines, antiseptics, and slowly built a growing empire. Each new product fed their ambition. But it wasn't until the 1970s that they truly found their path. They acquired MS-Contin, a time-release morphine pill primarily used for cancer patients. This was a turning point. The future wasn't in simple remedies like earwax removers. It was in the vast, largely untapped market of pain management. By the time Arthur Sackler had passed away in 1987, Mortimer and Raymond were ready to introduce their most ambitious product yet. In 1996, Purdue Pharma launched OxyContin. This was a time-release pill containing oxycodone, a powerful opioid chemically related to heroin. The drug itself was not revolutionary. Studies showed it was not more effective than other painkillers. The FDA's own review stated that OxyContin had no meaningful advantage over traditional oxycodone pills taken multiple times a day. But the Sacklers weren't selling a better drug. They were selling a story.
The pain that I have basically covers my neck to my feet.
34 million adults suffer from chronic pain. 50 million workdays are lost each year due to chronic pain.
Purdue's marketing campaign was enormous in scale and deeply deceptive. The company deployed an army of sales representatives that outnumbered those of even the biggest pharmaceutical firms. These reps went from doctor's office to doctor's office, armed with samples, selective studies, and a well-rehearsed script. The message was simple. OxyContin was different. It was safer. It was less addictive. Sales reps were trained to tell doctors the risk of addiction was less than 1%. Purdue gave out promotional items, fishing hats, stuffed animals, even a music CD called Get in the Swing with OxyContin. Between 1996 and 2001, Purdue spent over $200 million marketing the drug. They flew doctors to luxury resorts for educational conferences and handed out free starter coupons so patients could try the drug without cost. By 2001, 34,000 of these coupons had been redeemed. The results were immediate and staggering. In 1996, OxyContin generated $48 million in sales. By 2000, that number had exploded to $1.1 billion. Doctors who once prescribed opioids cautiously now wrote prescriptions for everything, from simple back pain to minor arthritis. What started as a painkiller gradually became a gateway to addiction, and a much darker reality began to spread across the country. The dire warnings came first from small towns in the Appalachian Mountains, from rural communities in New England, and from forgotten corners of America where people were dying. Patients were discovering something the Sacklers knew but had hidden. OxyContin's time-release mechanism could be easily defeated. People learned to crush the pills, thereby destroying the sustained release and getting all the drug at once. And gradually, they discovered other methods of administration to achieve overwhelming euphoria. At first, executives at Purdue dismissed these reports as rare problems. They pointed to their warning labels and marketing materials. But the evidence was mounting, and it told a horrifying story. The numbers were staggering. In Maine, patients treated for drug abuse increased 460% from 1995 to 2001. In eastern Kentucky, there was a 500% increase in people entering treatment programs, with 75% dependent on OxyContin. What had started as a regional problem was spreading like a plague across the entire country. By 2004, OxyContin had become the most abused prescription drug in America. But the crisis didn't stop with OxyContin. When people couldn't get or afford the pills, they turned to cheaper alternatives. They turned to heroin or to fentanyl. The Sacklers had opened a door that led to America's worst drug epidemic in history. The regions that had the highest availability of OxyContin, places like eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, and southwestern Virginia, became ground zero for an addiction crisis that would spread across the entire nation. And now comes the important question. Who really pulled the strings behind this devastating epidemic? As reports of addiction and death mounted, the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma didn't change course. Instead, they doubled down on deception.
Far from apologizing, Purdue Pharma is fighting back, saying its only intent is to get relief to the 50 million Americans in pain. But with a growing number of doctors saying they're afraid to prescribe OxyContin and at least 2 major supermarket chains refusing to carry it for fear of robbery, Purdue Pharma found itself in need of a PR miracle, so it went out and hired one.
Well, we've been working with Purdue for about 4 months now.
Seen here in a company-provided news release, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani has agreed to lend his considerable credibility to the drug maker's battle to save its bestseller.
When OxyContin was first approved by the FDA, it received a special fast-tracked approval. The agency accepted Purdue's claims that the time-release formula would reduce the risk of addiction, claims later proven dangerously misleading. But how did this happen? How did a drug with such a fatal flaw get approved so easily? Internal documents later revealed the disturbing truth. Executives knew about the addiction problems all along. Yet, they chose profit over people. They discussed ways to maximize revenue even as reports of abuse grew. Sales representatives weren't just told to downplay addiction risks. They were trained to aggressively push OxyContin for everything from backaches to dental work. No pain was too small. The company used sophisticated data to target the doctors who prescribed the most opioids. They built databases to identify not only physicians with the most chronic pain patients, but those who were most willing to write prescriptions for addictive drugs. The incentives were huge. Sales reps were rewarded with massive bonuses for increasing sales. In 2001, the average bonus was $71,500. Some earned nearly $240,000. That year, Purdue paid $40 million just in sales incentives. Then came the first real crack in the fortress. In 2007, Purdue Pharma pleaded guilty to criminal charges of misbranding OxyContin, falsely claiming it was less addictive than other opioids.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for being here.
We had a problem. We had death rates, we had reports from medical examiners, we had crime rates going up in certain parts of our community. We had an explosion of OxyContin availability in our community. And so all of those things led us to believe that we needed to take a look at this issue.
We launched OxyContin in 1996, and for the first 4 years on the market, we did not hear of any particular problem. I'm very proud to be working for this company. Nobody has taken the kind of initiative for a problem that is not just an OxyContin problem. This is a problem of drug abuse, this is a problem of prescription drug abuse, and OxyContin is now clearly, squarely in the midst of that problem.
They paid $634 million in fines. But for context, OxyContin had made $3 billion in sales that same year. This was only the beginning. As the opioid crisis deepened, states filed thousands of lawsuits against Purdue and the Sacklers. By 2019, over 1,600 cases had been brought by cities, counties, and states alike. David Sackler, Raymond's grandson, claimed ignorance of the drug's dangers. Other family members insisted Purdue bore no responsibility.
Do you believe that any of Purdue's conduct has led to an increase in people being addicted in the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
No.
Their words rang hollow against the backdrop of hundreds of thousands of deaths. In 2019, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy and proposed a settlement. The numbers sounded huge. $4.5 billion from the Sacklers over 9 years. But critics called it a drop in the ocean compared to the billions extracted from America's pain. And in exchange, the Sacklers were to receive immunity from criminal prosecution. In December 2021, a federal judge ruled the bankruptcy court couldn't grant that immunity. On January 23, 2025, Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family agreed to a $7.4 billion settlement with states and individuals. The family promised to pay $6.5 billion over 15 years. Despite paying billions, Forbes estimates the Sackler fortune still exceeds $10 billion. They own multi-million-dollar homes from London to Manhattan and estates most can only dream of. Yet their name has become toxic, forever linked to one of America's deadliest drug epidemics. But maybe the most frightening part isn't just the deaths, it's how easily it happened. The regulatory system failed. The medical profession was seduced by marketing dollars. Politicians were bought with campaign contributions. This raises a chilling question. Can a legal business be worse than organized crime? The Sacklers never held a gun to anyone's head. They never forced anyone to take their drug. They just lied, and millions paid the price.